Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Easton Library Community Book Chat. So for today's episode, I'm so happy that we're going to be talking to Stephanie Christie. Hi, Stephanie, how are you?
Good. How are you doing, Christine?
Very well, thank you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So Stephanie, you have created the Best Lives Book Club. And this book club focuses on books that address topics related to raising children and teens, and mental health, and some other really important issues. This is a monthly book club meeting for adults, and it is hosted by the Easton Library and the Mark Twain Library. These books are such great, valuable resources, probably now more than ever. So what gave you the idea to start this book club?
So we have an organization called the ERCCC, which the name changed in the summertime to Root to Prevention. And it is Reading and Easton's Coalition for Mental Health and Substance Abuse Prevention. And when I took over the coalition, I wanted to look at this more for root causes of mental health challenges for teens and substance abuse, and some of the triggers that drive children to, I would say, feel intense stress that could drive that, and self-harm. And we know, because we live in a I would say a competitive area of the country, that people push themselves very hard to be successful. And there tend to be very clear ideas about what that means and how to get there. And we can't all always fit the bill of how to do that. And so I wanted to explore the topic and look at different people who had studied and written and shared their personal experiences about how they had struggled with that in their life, accomplished it, different social norms, and kind of trying to dissuade people from thinking that we all can only get there one way, and look at different people's personal experiences. And this month it is Tara Westover's, and she wrote a book talking about her life growing up. And so that's essentially the gist of the Best Lives, is how do we each live our own best life and not come at it from a prescriptive standpoint.
Yeah, it's a fantastic idea. And I think for especially parents, but really any adult, or even like new adult, it's probably the resources are so wonderful just to sort of get people through life and all the really difficult things that can come with it. So
yeah, and it's really not just about parenting. I think there's different stages of our lives where we have to reevaluate whether or not we're going in the direction that we want. And so the resources in the book club help us all evaluate that.
Yeah, they really do. And so, like you said, for January, the book is Educated, a Memoir by Tara Westover. And it's gotten a lot of attention. People have just loved it and reacted so strongly to it. So can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. Tara grew up in Idaho, and she's talking about, essentially, she grew up in the mountains of Idaho, fairly isolated with her family. She discusses how her parents, her father had a mental health issue that really shaped the family's outlook on life, and directed them towards an isolationist perspective that was very religious, Mormon. And because he didn't enroll her in school, and there were like 7 kids, and his mental health challenges kind of came on each successive child. It got worse until he was in his 30s and the youngest children weren't in school. And so she really lived a very isolated upbringing, and each one of her older siblings would slowly move away or slowly decide to move away. And by the time it got to one of her older brothers, Tyler, he was self-educating at a very high level, teaching himself algebra and trigonometry and getting himself into college without any formal education. And then she proceeded to do the same thing, and talks about how it really aligned her against her family's values and how she tried to navigate that and remain true to them, but also own her own truth and find her own path and deal with the consequences of that. And so, not to ruin the whole book, but she's extremely bright. She did have help from Tyler, and I think it was mostly Tyler studying to get into college. And then once she got there, she slowly expanded her wings, and in the process, became more and more intellectually self-sufficient from her parents, which drove a wedge in the relationship. But it was her self-discovery, going through her teens and her college years. And she ended up in Cambridge and Harvard and, as a highly acclaimed author, and really a fascinating woman, because she's just very, very perceptive. And she wrote the book incredibly well. Each chapter she kind of summarizes with what she learned from the experience in that chapter. And so it's, it builds, but she's not just academically brilliant. She's really perceptive about her own life and what she took away from it. And I think very balanced and fair with the people that she loved, I read it a second time just to prepare for this. And that was kind of what I took away from it. It was like, she was really fair. She really saw all that was wonderful in them and tried to be true to both sides. So.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Is that what you liked mainly about the book, would you say?
I think what I liked about the book, it's hard to say because there's so many elements of it that from my upbringing that I identified with, from the religious element of it and trying to make peace with not necessarily following the same path as you were raised to just like this. She says at one point that everyone was defining who she was and what the world was to her, and she didn't realize until that moment that her voice in her own head could be as loud and as strong and as relevant as theirs. And I think that for everyone, that kind of coming into your own about how to interpret your life and whose interpretation of it you should believe in, and owning your own truth, I think is really powerful. And then, just listening to her realizations, I think as she comes across them was fascinating. And I just admire her so much.
What do you think you learned from the book? What do you think other people might learn from it also?
I think this is a tougher question when I'm on a video call, because I was literally going through and taking pictures at the end of every chapter, and her kind of summarizing what she took away from it. But sorry, I'm going to ignore that. I think it's just a delivery. I think that the willingness to grow really what I took away from it, because for most of us, we don't come from such an isolated existence. And she was really reflective, but so willing to push those barriers. It was like she was cut from the same cloth as her family, and as drastic and as narrow as they were, she was equally strong at opening and pushing and striving. And so I thought she was fascinating because she just kept pushing herself to grow out of norms of thinking that didn't make sense and that were uncomfortable, and that maybe her siblings accepted and just kept working with and trying to accommodate their parents, but she kept pushing herself to what she thought was truth and exploring that and testing it. And so that was inspiring. And one of her professors was talking to her about, she was asking him actually, because she she didn't identify with wanting to be a mother and a wife. And he says, why don't you see what you're capable of first before you settle for that? And I mean, it was great advice, and she took it. You know what I mean? She took the encouragement to not limit herself, and you know, and just continued to explore that. And I think that's what if we want that for our children, I think, you know, and we want that for ourselves. I thought it was a beautiful example. So sorry, it can be cheesy, but
No, it's fantastic. I mean, it's been on the bestseller list for an incredible amount of time. So, I mean, it obviously is very relevant to people, and it's a great lesson. Yeah, and like you said, she's a good writer, which even is better.
You know, I think what's interesting when I talk to people about the book, I think what they're fascinated by is that she made it out
Mhm.
and became so successful. And I really don't see that as the story. I see self-realization from you know, pulling herself away from what were abusive norms and dysfunctions that were completely redefining of reality in a way, like when she was able to step out of it and kind of see things as different than they were defined for her, and that I thought that was the story. And I think that's the story for her. I don't understand quite why the fascination with her academic accomplishments is the most fascinating thing for people, because there are a lot of people that go to that can stay within a mindset that they were raised with and never really challenge it, even if it is dysfunctional. But for her, that was the truth. The truth wasn't just the learning. It wasn't the book work, you know, it was the self-realization.
What kind of books do you like to read, Stephanie?
Books like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, all kinds of books on personal development and I think understanding what makes each of us special and unique and how we can leverage that for a happy life, and kind of improve the world around us. And so I'm like I'm into that. I don't even think of them as self-help, but they because I think it assumes you have some kind of a problem. But self-discovery, just all books about people finding themselves and how their view in the world shifted. And she kept using that phrase a lot, how her view would shift. And then it opened up new possibilities. And I think that's true in this when thinking about the self, but also thinking about business and politics and culture. And so those are thought processes I like to explore through characters and fiction and you know, real stories about how people evolve. So that's the thing.
And there's great books like that for every age group also, which is really so fantastic. You know. So the Easton Library, we have multiple copies of Educated at the circulation desk or for curbside pickup. And we also have them available for a downloadable audiobook or an ebook, which is fantastic too. So thank you so much to Stephanie for being here today. And if you would like to join the discussion on Educated with the Best Lives Book Club, you can register for the book club on our website under the book groups tab. The date for the next meeting is Monday, January 18th at 7 p.m. Registration is required, so we will send you a Zoom link after you register. And we hope to see you there for a great discussion. So thank you so much for watching Library Book Chat, and stay well. And Stephanie, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Christine.
Have a great
And I
day.
look forward to meet anyone who's interested in joining us. Give us a month.
Yes, I think it's such a great thing, and I think people will really enjoy it.
Yeah, and a fun group of people.
Yeah, and a great conversation.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
You too.